Hey aspirants, welcome to Insights IAS initiative. So let us begin today's discussion with a topic very much relevant to our GS paper 1, that is Indian society. It is also applicable to our GS paper 4. So the concept is a topic called Behind the Rise of Asian Auntie. So this article originally had been printed in the Bloomberg newspaper. Many of the Indian newspapers have re-represented it in their own editorial columns. So this one had recently come up in New Indian Express, Deccan Herald, Economic Times and other popular newspapers. So, what is this idea of Asian auntie? So, the term, many of us have heard this term in our lives. So, it has gained attention as a cultural stereotype. So, remember the word cultural stereotype. So, it is highlighting the complex blend of traditional values and modern realities. So, if you remember, if you see the idea of an Asian auntie, it is about a woman who is quintessential in running the affairs of the household. So, if you remember again, and if you have observed in your daily lives, the term auntie comes with a negative notion. It is usually an idea of respect, but at the same time, it has also been used to put down women, suggesting that you're already past your prime. So, very common for younger people to call older women aunties in a teasing and not so kind way. And many younger women who are, let's say, around 30s and above, don't like themselves to be called as aunties because it's a kind of derogatory term for them which make them feel older. But this idea of Asian aunties or Asian women being called in this way is being pushed back against this stereotype, and now many women are coming forward with many positive viewpoints on growing older. So if you see the Western notion of the meaning of aunt, it is about niece and nephews, that is one's siblings children, addressing them as aunt. So it's a biological relationship. But when it comes to Asian societies, this term auntie becomes a stereotyped one, which usually signifies the age of a woman rather than her social position or the relationship with others. Hence, what is the advantage or what are the different notions that are of late developing is, if you take this idea in a uh, political notion, women today in the present Asian world are voting in great numbers. So government also is taking consideration of this women as a vote bank and trying to become a voice for them, trying to empower them with respect to their political and other decisions. And when it comes to economic importance, by 2050, the idea is that above 60 people who are above 60 will reach around 2.1 billion across the world, and majority of them are going to be women. So if you see, the women usually provide, we have also discussed in many of our ICANN videos that women usually are called providers of care. So this might be unpaid or underpaid work. It allows the family to work properly. It saves more amount of money, and at the end of the day rises the GDP of a country to a great extent. So these notions have of late been discussed with the idea of women and their increasing representation. So aging can be grim. This subheading was consisting with the idea that for many people, when the age just progresses, they lose the charm in their life. They feel that anyway life is moving ahead. Why to be so enthusiastic? We have achieved many things. Let's be sober now. So this whole process of aging is usually considered grim, and it comes with a lot of physical and mental deterioration. This is a concept discussed about it, and because of this there's a lot of discrimination in the society that you're getting old, these are the occupations that you should not do. And according to WHO's global report on ageism, one in every two people experience ageist attitude. That is, they feel that they are getting old and they are discriminated against in the society. That is what we call ageist attitude. And most this is a most socially normalized prejudice. That is, it is totally okay to treat elderly people with a specific attitude, because it is accepted socially that a person who is in the mid age or later cannot perform many activities and such kind of ideas. So this leads to a social concept called othering, that is seeing a group of people as being unlike ourselves. So you can see this as an example, especially for usage of digital devices in India, where many of the people who are in the old age bracket might not be digitally savvy, and they are dependent on the younger generation, making them under the victims of othering. That is, younger generation are separate, olders are separate. So this is a reality in the Asian system now. But when it specifically comes about aging and women, uh, they turn to be more complex, because women are not only becoming victims of ageism, they're also becoming victims of sexism, that is gender based discrimination. And when this complicated idea exists, they are underrepresented in medias as well. What would be the challenges and the idea they are facing, and the same time they are usually ignored in many important domains where still male are present, especially in the consumer market, the social and public places as well. The role of a middle class or upper age woman is usually ignored. And there is a term associated with idea called as women are usually grandmotherized. That is, it is assumed that they are incompetent when they get older, and they're not able to do the functions that even a normal male can perform. So this is the stereotype that is usually associated with the idea of Asian aunties. Okay, so there is a reference given here of a novel called Tomb of Sand, which has won the International Booker Prize Award in 2022, penned down by Geetanjali Shah. So she, in many of her books, is very vocal about the challenges faced by older age women. So she talks about a concept called invisibility of women. So, invisibility of women, it is often a natural state for so many. Despite much progress, men are still priority in many families and societies in the Asian country. So, the invisibility of women, or kind of women being taken for granted, is an idea that is emphasized in Tomb of Sand novel, which would be very relevant for you to quote in GS paper 1. Questions on gender stereotyping, also relevant for GS paper 4. This again comes with another female activist in the country, who is an actress, model, and an entrepreneur called Lisa Ray. She has been playing a major significant role in many of the Indian movies. So she has refashioned herself in her 50s. So currently the age of this actress is 53 years. But she tells that breaking through these negative stereotypes and telling that these activities are relevant only for women of a certain age is something we need to conquer and talk about. So women who were released from many of the responsibilities in the earlier days, so that they could help pass the life lessons to next generation. So this stereotype that women can do only this job at this age is more structured towards women than the men, and hence we need to break this pattern, right? So a new dimension is given here by a Singaporean art activist who is known by the name Nice Aunties. So this activist has created a multiverse called Auntie-verse, which talks about various unfulfilled representations of women using artificial intelligence. AI is used to create virtual anti-sphere to turn the stereotypes down and tell that the world is needs to be kinder to women like these, who have built the societies by their kind, and we can talk about care economy they are completely supporting. So this concept of Asian auntie has gained quite popularity in the world, especially in in the international media. So it is always better for us to know a concept like this if we get a question in this pattern. That is, how do societal perception of aging and gender contribute to the reinforcement of stereotypes like that of the Asian auntie, and what impact does this have on women's social roles? So if not a direct question like this topic or this phrase is very useful to be starting your answer with, or even to conclude your answer with. So note it down from separate perspective in paper 1 and paper 2, both of them. So the second article we'll discuss is about GS paper 2, that is other ways to opt out of constant election mode. So one nation one election topic is quite old now, and many of you would have thoroughly read about it in the newspaper. In the beginning, we'll just quickly revise whatever you have studied with respect to one nation one election, a few points of them, and go to suggest some alternative to one nation one election as per this author, right? So recently the parliament has been negotiating the 199th constitutional amendment bill, which is about conducting simultaneous election for Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly, and making sure the local elections, that is elections to the panchayat and municipalities, happen within 100 days of the national and the state election taking place. So if you see the story here, Lok Sabha elections were and the state elections went on in a simultaneous manner in 1952, 57 and 62. But early dissolution of legislation hampered the cycle of elections for Lok Sabha and assemblies, and they started having varying schedules. So as a result, what has happened of late, the whole country is in the election mode. Either the center or one or the other state government is constantly going for election, and we know how it has hampered the process of governance, because most of the time the political parties are focusing on the elections that are happening in different places with less emphasis on governance. So what are the advantages of one nation one election here? So the advantages is, if all the elections are focused on only once in 5 years, governance will be better. We can talk about cost cutting and making sure expenditures on elections will be brought down, and it would be better utilization of resources. And some social implications are also there, because many reports tell that the caste and religious identities are at peak during this time due to ideas of hate speech and the others as a part of political campaigning, and the society is at most in the unrest feature when there is an election season going on. But if everything happens once in every 5 years, the remaining time the society can rebuild its social fabric and come out of the trauma that they go through to the hate speech and the political campaigning. So what is the basic premise on which one nation one election is based? The logic of choice of at various levels of government is assumed to be the same. That is, many a times evidence provides that many people are against this with the idea that voters make different choices at the national and state level. So the statistics tells that this could be relevant for your exam to counter one nation one elections. From 2014 to 2023, in total there were 58 elections that were conducted in the country at Lok Sabha and the different state legislative assemblies. So 31 out of these 58 elections, the verdict varied. That is, what was the vote at the Lok Sabha was different from the voting at the state legislative assembly. So the more the gap, chances of variation was much higher. So this tells that if we go for one nation one election, it might hamper the federal aspects of a country, of the constitution. So the second is focus is more on autonomy, we can say. What is the autonomy we are talking about? Different political promises are given by the parties at the central level and the state level. So the voters need to exercise their judgment independently without thinking that they are inspired more by the legislative assembly election but voting it differently, because what matters to them is not just the national priorities but the state priorities. So the third idea the author told was India of late has become election only democracy. So this phrase is again a catchy one, election only democracy. That is, people have the right to vote. So this is the only way in which we are able to tell that we are parts of democracy and we can also take part in decision making. So when such an expression is limited for only once in 5 years, people would not find a meaningful role in shaping the political nuances or even in the public opinion. Hence, the frequent election nothing but gives an alternative to people that yes, we are part of a democracy and we matter to the making of the governments. So that sentiment of feeling would be lost if elections are concentrated only once in every 5 years. So what could be the better alternatives? So better alternative would be to compare both these ideas and to bring a conclusion in between. So there are two important alternatives suggested, that is one nation, two elections. So what's the meaning of this? If Lok Sabha election, let's say, is held in the first year, election to state assemblies and local bodies should be held in the third year of the 5 year cycle. So first year it will be Lok Sabha election, next will be state legislative assembly election and local body election. So this is in the 5 year cycle. So voters can make clear calls for Lok Sabha polls, state assembly polls and even the local body. So this is a better parameter rather than concentrating elections on only once in every 5 years. The second is a 2 week window. So what does this mean? Even when we are conducting this third state legislative elections in the third year, we can make sure that all the elections in the country in that year are scheduled in just 2 weeks. There, it's not like if we are going to have an election in 2026, throughout the year all 28 states will go for elections. No, the idea would be in the year 2026 we'll designate 2 weeks only for the purpose of election in all the 28 states. So this would also fulfill all the advantage that one nation, one election comes with, along with keeping the federal idea and the regional ideas intact. So the way ahead for implementing one nation election would be a meaningful debate, just as we see that the Joint Parliamentary Committee is debating about it. So note down these two alternatives to one nation, one election. It would be relevant for your mains answer writing. This paper 4 majorly, and also some kind of essays and GS2 governance, functioning of Indian democracy and all those topics. So it is also in addition to what we had discussed in our previous ICANN episode about education qualification of a political leader. So these both topic comes under political reforms or reforms of the political parties, or we can also tell about bettering Indian democracy, because the way Indian democracy functions is through its political parties today because of the multi or variable functions they provide to enforce democracy. So if you see the status of current political leaders is that age or state of health, based on both of them, the political leaders usually don't choose to retire. Some fade away, that is, some people are forgotten, whereas some hold power till the last breath. The exceptions to this is Jai Prakash Narayan, as was popularly called as JP, and Nanaji Deshmukh. So both of them were leaders who retired from active political life, telling that it is time for us to be replaced by new and better talented people. So, political leaders in Indian democracy. So, there was a book recently inaugurated by the leader of opposition, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge. This book was written by Sushil Kumar Shinde. So the title of the book goes that 5 decades in politics. So in that inauguration ceremony, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge was heard telling that nobody should retire from politics. That is, especially those who believe in a good ideology, wants to serve their nation, they should hold on to the politics till the last breath. So in a democratic country, democratic order, politicians contribute essentially in shaping the future of the nation. Their decisions and contributions impact like lives of millions of people. So they're expected to make informed choices. So if you see Jayaprakash Narayan's case, he had to step out of the retirement just to lead an agitation, because here experience and expertise mattered a lot to give a new political dimension to Indian democracy, which was in threat. So, in the contrasting sense, if you see, in India's dynamic society, the socio political order is transforming with the speed of light. So, experience is not enough. That is, many a times, if you see, what the political leaders tell might not be applicable, because the decisions and the changes have been quite dynamic and the leaders decision making is not so quick enough. So experience is not enough. Experience is relevant only to a given environment and circumstances, but under changing idea this wouldn't work. So there's a very popular quote told by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, telling that there are domains in which expertise is not possible, and in long term political strategic forecasting it has shown that experts are just not better than a dice throwing monkey. This was quoted in the article as it is. You can take it down. It's a very harsh way of telling that expertise in politics will not work because of the dynamic situation, right? So the author here gives us a glimpse of the different generations that is currently shaping our worlds. So the silent generation were people who were born between 25 to 45, baby boomers between 46 to 64, Gen X from 65 to 79, millennials, most of the people in the working age population are them who are born between 80 to 94, then Gen Z, those born between 97 to 2012, Gen Alpha, that is 2012 to 2024, and the present generation which is being born is Gen Beta 2025 and continuing. So all these people are navigating the difficulties in their life, their hopes, aspirations, priorities, and even preferences. They are not always common. So many choices made by politicians don't meet the hopes and aspirations of people belonging to different generations here. So because of this, we see there is a lot of policy paralysis that comes into making, especially in the developing world. So Meera Nayak, a popular psychologist, tells that cognitive capacity, that is decision making capacity, declines with the age of a person. This we can say scientifically tells that it is better for aged populations to step aside. So Indian politics, according to her, is dominated by the baby boomers, that is those which were born between 1946 and 64. So there is a direct connection needed with different generation people, so that people will the politicians will interact with other generations and know what they want. But many of our Syrian politicians, they are not even physically fit today to travel and be in touch with the voters regularly. So let's say when they are defeated in this any election because of lack of touch with the general public, they would re-enter politics either by elections to Rajya Sabha or state legislative council. So this is a reality we can definitely write about, deteriorating quality of India's parliament or deteriorating quality of our democracy. So why? What is the advantage of staying around in the political arena even when one is physically and emotionally not capable of doing it? The idea goes with the concept of love of office, limelight that the person has enjoyed throughout their prime life, and the other perquisites that comes with it. So if the person retires, let's say, the idea of political dynasties makes sure the successors come to power, that is their children or grandchildren. And the problem is that the successors are also not trained at the grassroots level, so their politics produce suboptimal outcomes, that is it's not up to the mark, and society is deprived of the benefits of a democratic franchise. So under this idea here, we can see that there are quite a few conclusion would be in a way where there are quite a few well-meaning septuagenarian politicians who have genuinely worked to serve the society. Like, let's say, elderly statesmen, they should work for politics of change. That is, that change is about subordinating narrow political interest to larger national good, to bring younger generation into politics by replacing the older. So India's first generation politicians consisted of mostly these kind of individuals. So for them, love of office meant to serve the deprived sections of society. So both these reforms we have spoken about, that is, one, making education of a particular qualification compulsory for becoming or getting into politics in the country, and age barrier or specified retirement age for political parties and leaders is a must. They would make the democracy more meaningful and take it to the grassroots level, and everybody would have a chance to represent themselves and actively participate in the political discourses. Based on Indian Express newspaper called Imagine a Trust Based Society. So we see that there are many trade wars going on in the country. Economies are increasingly following inward looking policies, for example, making America great again, and conservative governments ruining the world. There is a need to change our perception about economy. So the traditional belief is that a country's economy can grow when there is a lot of capital inflows into it, when production incentives are given to industries, they perform really well and we are scoring a GDP high, that shows economic growth. Or let's say we are clearing the banks of non-performing assets, that would give better GDP growth. There is no doubt all these are a good way of generating high GDP growth, but the authors of this article tell that these are the tangible ways of increasing one's growth. That is, we can bring changes in the land, we can bring changes in the labor, we can change the capital requirement, amend the laws to bring these tangible changes. But what really matters in a present world is that it's about tangible factors, that intangible factors that are necessary for the growth of a country. So one such requirement, that is an intangible factor, the one that which cannot touch or feel but extremely relevant, is trust in the society. So absence, there is a observed absence of trust in the Indian society. Especially we can talk about between businesses, between business and the government, between business and the consumers. So this would really make the society not a better place to live in, despite however grand GDP numbers we talk about. So let's say there's a small business enterprise which is trying to flourish itself. So what are the challenges the business person faces here? They have to give so much of time and energy on working to see that their payments come on time. They constantly have to keep a tab on it. They constantly have to deal with many corrupt officials to move their files in the official echelons. They have to make sure whether their land titles are safe or not. So especially major business friends in India, they do not come from a business family. So in case any uncertainty happens here, they do not have a family to fall back upon, because of which many Indian families don't take up the risk of business, as whatever the uncertainty the business atmosphere offers, that cannot be trusted in the real sense. So intangible factors here also matter a lot. Just imagine if we didn't have this stress, or if there was trust all over, the above mentioned businessman would have easily got into, not only got into business, but would have created a lot of value addition by boosting the scale of their business enterprise. Only if trust existed that their payments would be on time, the officials in the government would pass the procedure fast, and there is no threat of losing the land that they are having. So the notion of trust, the notion of trust in the old versus modern society, trust, they both these societies are distinguished by this only idea, that is, in the olden times the circle of trust was mainly families and friends. So the only person you could trust was either a member of your family or your close friend. But as we build a modern society where people from different parts of the world come and establish themselves in urban area, this circle is nothing but expanding. That is, we are going to trust people who are beyond these traditional circles, and these are the people whom we don't even know personally. So in the modern time, we see that the comfortable way in which a society can survive is amidst 150 to 200 people. The trust functions great in such smaller societies. But in the modern mechanism, if we are going to go beyond this, so none of the urban areas, not even a locality is having minimum 200, there are more than that. So when we are planning to shift on a major society with larger population, we need to find a mechanism to build this trust among the people. If not, all the economic opportunities would not be advantageous. So what are the advantages of trust in a society now? When we go out on for work, we leave the homes without any fear. The food we eat outside is with the trust that it is healthy. The water we consume is with the perception that it's not polluted. When we deposit money in the banks, we feel that it is safer and nothing would happen to it. And most recently, when a person makes a online payment, that is a prepaid payment on an e-commerce site, the belief is that this e-commerce site will deliver my product and I don't mind spending huge amount of money on an iPhone or any pricey computer or a laptop, because it would be delivered on time and I trust this platform. So this is the advantage that business opportunities can flourish on if the trust in the system persists. So what happens if there is lack of trust? So just imagine if we are going on work and there is no trust in the system. We would install expensive CCTV cameras around our homes, spend a lot of money on expensive lock and locker system, try to spend huge money by keeping our jewelries in the bank and all of them. So if we had a safe locality, all these expenses would have been saved and the efforts to think in this direction would have been saved. So if just a locality, if we multiply it to a city and the country as a whole, imagine the amount of efforts, time and resource it's going to save, which can be utilized to unlock many potentials that have been made society in a better way. So building trust is in a very robust and predictable institution mechanism is very much important if we are talking about creating a good society in the present world, and it's the trust that should be the basis of this. So society that has high level of trust have lower cost of doing business. So if we can create institutional systems that inspire trust between the people, we can be so much more effective, prosperous, efficient. So the idea is we need to think about how to build a society where people can trust each other. So that is the future to look forward to. Right. So where this topic would be relevant in our answers is about social capital. We had got this also as a prelims question. What is the meaning of social capital? So social capital would be an added perspective, because this idea of trust is nothing but it acts as a glue that fosters harmony, reduces conflict and makes a society a better place to live. So high levels of trust in societies, it acts as a social capital, enabling smoother cooperation and reducing friction. The best example could be Kudumbashri program from the state of Kerala, where trust among women entrepreneurs has created a sustainable socio-economic model, we can see. So when it comes to GS paper 2, we have topics on transparency, accountability, trust in the institutions. So let's say transparency governance models like right to information, e-governance platforms, it is nothing but building trust with the public so that government has a faith on what the government is doing. So we can also talk about paper 3, GS paper 3, where from the economy perspective, ease of doing business can be done not by just material works but also by intangible ideas of giving trust. For example, take Nordic countries. the ones which have given many successful entities like Spotify and all of them. So these countries are producing such great businesses because there is high trust, there is low corruption, unlike countries like India, where though we have improved a lot on ranking, there is still a lot of work needs to be done. So this is where we can also use the concept of trust in economy. At the same time, in GS paper 4, this idea can be used to explain how ethical leaders inspire trust in the society. They create a foundation for accountability and cooperation. So, especially when you get questions related to ethical dilemmas and all of them, you can easily use the idea of trust to solve the ethical crisis. So, remember to note this down topic from 4 different GS paper perspective. So, in respective subheadings, you can note them down so that its usage in specific answers will be easier. Two halves of life. It is a small write up that had come in Economic Times. Two halves of life is a concept that was told by Carl Jung. So he explains the idea in a small quote. You can note it down as it would be very relevant for your mains answer writing. We'll see how. So, first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it, right? So he has defined the life into first half and second half. So what is the first half or the initial days? So in this, a person usually, let's say this is the younger and formative age of our lives, the young early 20s and 30s, we can see we are mainly focused on building our identity. Here we talk about acquiring what are the rules of the game, how to play around. We talk about seeking recognition in a particular group. We talk about membership into various social organization. We talk about creating wealth, building a family. So basically these are nothing but ideas that are self-centered, ideas of attainment. We can talk about, we are focusing on upward mobility in this case. On the other hand, the rest of the life or the second half of the life, we mainly focus on discovering the meaning behind what we did in the first half. Why did we do it? We start searching for answers here. We try to mature into the attainment which is already earned. We learn to surrender, and we learn to let go of things that actually don't matter a lot. And ultimately, we are doing nothing but discovering our own self, discovering the ideas of love and the vibrant soul that we all have. So, this topic of Carl Jung is very much relevant when we talk about the two ways of life. So, as you can see, it is directly applicable to GS paper 4 when we talk about ethical development of a person, how the lives of the leaders, if you take for example Mahatma Gandhi, the later life, when he transformed from a successful lawyer, to a leader who led the Indian freedom struggle, the transition was from self-satisfied profession to a spiritually aware idea of getting into we can say independence to the nation. So first and the second self is difference, you can see in this way. And in GS paper 4 also, in the concept of emotional intelligence, it highlights the importance of balancing our external success with inner growth. That is, ethical decision making would be easier when we are one with the two identities that we have been fighting for. So in essays, we know the philosophical questions that have already been asked on self-introspection and all of them. In such questions, using the first half and second half of life would be a very good idea. At the same time, when we compare this for Indian society in GS paper 1, the various stages of life explained in Hinduism also goes with the same concept. So in the initial year, the idea is about building identity, whereas in the later two stages, it is about discovering the meaning behind what all we have done. So in religion perception also, this explanation could be useful. So remember to reconnect this with your essay topics. If you are making a framework for various essays or quotes that you are coming across, see and find where this would rightly fit in so that your answers would get a better dimension. So that's it for today's discussion. Meet you in the next episode with more such intriguing topics. Thank you so much.